It was one of those evenings when the sun had just gone down and the city lights were beginning to blink awake, the kind of time when judgment and visibility both get a little tricky. The courtroom was quiet, and all eyes were fixed on Judge Judy Sheindlin, a woman whose sharp wit and sharper logic could cut through any excuse. Two people stood before her, each insisting that the other was to blame for an automobile accident. One, a cautious driver turning left. The other, a confident motorcyclist claiming his right-of-way. The air was thick with tension, but Judge Judy had seen it all before. She didn't need dramatics. She needed facts. The case began with simple introductions. Ms. Mellick was behind the wheel of her car that night, waiting to make a left-hand turn onto Southeast Imlay Avenue. The defendant, Mr. Filmer, was on his motorcycle, driving straight down the road. There was no traffic light, no stop sign, just open asphalt and a handful of vehicles sharing the same stretch. Ms. Mellick said she waited for the way to clear before turning. Mr. Filmer insisted he had the right-of-way. A moment later, their paths crossed violently. His motorcycle clipped the back end of her car, sending him crashing to the ground and leaving her vehicle damaged. Judge Judy leaned forward, resting her elbows on the bench. "Let's make this simple," she said. "You were making a left-hand turn. He was going straight. He had the right-of-way. That's basic driver's education." Her voice cut through the air like a knife. Ms. Mellick nodded, nervously glancing toward the man who had been injured. Mr. Filmer stood tall, his arms still stiff from a shoulder that had been dislocated in the accident. Both of them had insurance, yet somehow neither company was willing to pay. Each insurer had come to the same conclusion: their own client was not at fault. The result was a deadlock. "So," Judge Judy said, her tone slightly amused, "your insurance companies basically said, 'A pox on both your houses.'" Bird, her longtime bailiff, chuckled quietly. The courtroom audience followed, but Judge Judy wasn't there to laugh. She wanted to understand what really happened that night. Ms. Mellick claimed she had started her turn only when the road was clear. Then, out of nowhere, she said, the motorcycle came shooting between two cars. She pointed to a diagram she had drawn, showing two vehicles side by side with a narrow gap between them. "He came right through there, Your Honor. I couldn't have seen him." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. "And where do you think he came from, Ms. Mellick? Dropped out of the sky?" Her sarcasm wasn't cruel, it was surgical. If you're making a left-hand turn, it's your job to make sure the road is completely clear. That's why the law gives the right-of-way to the person going straight. But she wasn't done. Turning her attention to Mr. Filmer, she asked, "Were you speeding?" He hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. I was going about 5 miles over the limit." Judge Judy didn't blink. 5 miles? He sighed. "Maybe 10. The courtroom stirred. The truth was spilling out slowly, like oil from a cracked engine. "And you were weaving between cars, weren't you?" She pressed. "I made a legal lane change," he said, trying to sound composed. Judge Judy raised both brows. "A legal lane change? Could you have done that if you were driving a car instead of a motorcycle?" "Well," he said, half smiling, "maybe a smart car." The room broke into laughter again, but Judge Judy's expression didn't soften. "All right, Mr. Smart Car," she said coldly. "Your counterclaim is dismissed." The laughter faded, replaced by silence. Mr. Filmer lowered his head slightly, knowing he had just lost the sympathy of the bench. He admitted he felt a little responsible for what happened, though he insisted it wasn't his fault. "She turned when she shouldn't have," he said. "I couldn't stop in time. There were cars behind me." Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "But you were speeding. You were going faster than everyone else on the road. You were weaving in and out of lanes, and you admit it was dark. You created the danger that put you in that situation." He nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am." Then she turned back to Ms. Mellick. "You too have some responsibility," she said. "You were making a left turn. You didn't wait long enough to make sure everything was clear. You didn't anticipate something unexpected, like a motorcycle moving through traffic." Ms. Mellick tried to defend herself, her voice rising slightly. "But, Your Honor, there's no way I could have predicted someone would come between two cars like that. His lights were hidden." "That's what you call anticipation," Judge Judy snapped. "When you're driving, you must assume the unexpected can happen. A child running into the road, an animal darting between cars, or, in this case, a speeding motorcycle appearing out of nowhere. That's what defensive driving means." The courtroom was still. It was the kind of moment that reminded everyone that driving wasn't just about rules, it was about responsibility. Judge Judy then asked to see their documents. The insurance letters, the photos, the police report. The evidence confirmed what she already suspected. Mr. Filmer's bike was heavily damaged, his shoulder dislocated. Ms. Mellick's car had a dented rear panel and broken lights. Each side had a story, and neither was spotless. "How long have you been riding?" she asked the defendant. 3 years, he answered. "Then you should know better," she said. "Motorcycles must follow the same laws as cars. You don't get to bend the rules just because your vehicle is smaller." He didn't argue. His honesty had already softened the courtroom's mood, but it couldn't save his case. Judge Judy sat back in her chair and took a breath. "If I had to assess blame," she said slowly, "I'd say most of it rests with you, Mr. Filmer. You were speeding, weaving between cars, and going 10 miles faster than the rest of traffic. You were making everyone around you uncomfortable, and you caused your own injury. But," she continued, turning to Ms. Mellick, "you're not blameless either. You were making a left-hand turn, and the law requires you to ensure the way is completely clear before you cross. You didn't do that," she paused, letting her words sink in. "So if I have to split responsibility," she said finally, "I will." The damages to Ms. Mellick's car totaled $2,800. Judge Judy awarded her half, $1,400, and denied Mr. Filmer's counterclaim for his injuries. "Because," she said plainly, "you can't come to court asking for money when your own actions helped cause the accident." Mr. Filmer nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am." As the case wrapped up, Judge Judy looked at both parties with the kind of authority that only decades on the bench could give. "Driving is not a game," she said. "It's about responsibility. You," she pointed to Ms. Mellick, "must wait until it's safe to turn. And you," she looked at the motorcyclist, "must remember that speed doesn't make you invincible. It just makes you faster to the hospital." Bird called out the final line. "Parties are excused." And the gavel struck. The courtroom erupted in its usual low hum as people began to leave. Outside, both drivers walked in silence, each thinking about how close the night could have come to tragedy. For Ms. Mellick, it was a lesson about patience and caution. For Mr. Filmer, a painful reminder that a few extra miles per hour could change everything. And for Judge Judy, it was another day's work. Another pair of stubborn Americans learning that common sense, not pride, is what keeps the world from crashing. Because in the end, as she often said, justice isn't about who yells louder. It's about who was smarter before the accident happened.